Further debate. I recognize the member for Toronto Danforth.
Speaker, thanks very much. I appreciate the recognition. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this bill this afternoon. Right off the top, I have to say this. This bill is a penny pincher. It does the bare minimum that one can do to be able to say, well, I did something for small business, but it doesn't do what small businesses need. Working people, small and medium-sized businesses, are facing financial disaster, and that's the simple reality. I'm sure it's the reality in your riding when you talk to the small businesses, and I'm sure it's the reality when you talk to people who would like to work for a small business or a medium-sized business. And unfortunately, this government, with this bill, is not offering people the lifeline that they need. It doesn't do anywhere near enough to help people and businesses recover from the pandemic's economic crisis. In fact, the government would be very well advised to take the plan that the NDP has put forward, our Save Main Street plan, that was presented first in April and updated in September, and implement that. And I will take this opportunity in the debate of this plan to outline some of the opportunities that the government could take to actually help businesses in this province. First of all, we know absolutely working people need jobs. They need financial stability in order to drive the recovery. If they don't have income, if they can't buy goods and services, then they are not going to be able to help boost that economy. We need a circulation of income. We know, looking at previous crises, that when consumers don't have income and they don't buy things, it is very difficult to actually build the economy back up. The reality has been for so many people that COVID-19 has made it very clear how profoundly people are living from paycheck to paycheck. They don't have large amounts of money socked away, not because people are irresponsible, but because they don't have enough money to provide a surplus that can be set aside for another day, or not one of consequence. So people are facing these fears of not being able to meet their mortgage payments, not being able to pay their rent, not being able to get groceries, and they are drawing down on whatever savings they have in the hope of getting through 2020 to a better place. We know, and I'll reiterate, that making sure that these small businesses, these medium-sized businesses, the people who work for them have income, have jobs going into the future, is one of the best things that we can do for an economic recovery in this province, frankly, and around the world. This bill doesn't create or protect jobs. It doesn't help small and medium-sized businesses get on their feet. It doesn't help everyday Ontarians recover from the financial strain that they are experiencing because of the pandemic. I have to say to you, Speaker, when I talk to the small businesses in my riding on the Danforth, on Gerrard, on Queen, on Pape Avenue, they feel as though they've been abandoned. And when the BIAs come to me and they come to the MP and they come to the City Councillor and they say, so what's your level of government had to put forward? As discontent as they are with the federal government, they're even more discontent at the provincial level. They feel like they've been assigned to the category of expendable. And that creates an awful lot of bitterness, Speaker, as you might well imagine. They didn't expect that a government that bills itself as pro-business would be so indifferent to their fate, so disinterested in actually helping them survive. 97% of all the COVID spending in Ontario has come from the federal government. 97%. This government promised to kick in, but instead it's sitting on about $9.3 billion, more than $7 billion of which is federal money transferred to the province to help with the pandemic. I don't understand why, when the need is so acute, so obvious, so pressing, that instead of putting the dollars to work to preserve small businesses, to preserve jobs, to make sure that people have a place to work today and in the future, the government isn't utilizing the funds that it has available. It makes no sense to me. And I know that when the Financial Accountability Office came out with their report showing this large amount of untapped, although allocated funds, small businesses in my riding were shocked. They couldn't believe that they'd been abandoned when the money was available and already allocated, but simply not being spent. And so in the end, what we have is a situation where governments get to make choices. Do you decide to spend on big business? Or do you cut and shortchange the things that working people, families, small businesses rely on? And unfortunately, this bill doesn't address that question. It doesn't actually make the choice to keep those small businesses going. In this city, in Toronto, there's something like 60 or 70,000 people who work in businesses that are part of business improvement associations. So the retail, the hospitality, the small-scale services along our main streets. That's an awful big workforce. It's an awful big workforce. And the uncertainty, the anxiety that lack of support is creating has impact right through this city. Because for every person who's not getting pay, or everyone who's afraid that next month they won't be able to get pay, there's a knock-on effect in terms of the ability to pay rent or make commitments to any purchases at all. And so the purchasing power in the city is diminished, and that has a substantial problem. The NDP has put forward a number of proposals to address this issue, to provide financial security for working people and for main streets. And that's what the government should be doing now. It shouldn't be pinching pennies. It should be helping people recover from the COVID-19 economic crisis. If we invest in working people and we invest in the employers that provide them with paychecks, overall, we have a much better outcome. Some of the things that we've called for are an immediate ban on all evictions, lockouts, or eviction threats by commercial landlords, and keep that in place until the pandemic ends. Because if you don't know whether you're going to be thrown out on the 15th of the month by your commercial landlord, your commitment to staying in business, to drawing on your savings, to searching wherever you can for funds to keep your doors open is dramatically reduced. Why do it when you know that 2 weeks into the month your business will be padlocked and your goods will be seized? So give people protection and certainty. The pandemic is not winding down. Now, I gather that there's a new model coming forward showing that there's some stability, and I hope that that is the case. But as we all know, we've seen a very rapid increase in the last 2 months. We're seeing 800, as much as 1,000 cases a day, whereas in August we were seeing as low as 85. So we're deep into it. We should recognize that. And whatever measures we put in place today, it is going to take a while for them to stabilize or roll things back. So we should recognize the pandemic isn't over yet. We've got at least the winter to get through, at least. And I think many people think I'm quite optimistic, but at least the winter to get through. So we need that stability for those commercial tenants. One of the things that was interesting to me, and a number of business owners have pointed out, they said, our landlords can throw us out. Very few new businesses are starting up, so they won't get new tenants. In a number of months, they'll go bankrupt, and the banks will assume ownership. And then the banks will go to the federal government or provincial government for a bailout. And they said, bail us out now, and you don't have to bail out much further down the road. And you know what, Speaker? There's a lot of wisdom in that. If in 2008, the federal government in the United States had helped homeowners, instead of assisting in mass eviction of homeowners, and helped stabilize their lives, that would have helped the American economy dramatically. Instead, they bailed out the banks and threw the homeowners into the street. Let's not repeat that error here in Ontario. Let's help keep those small businesses open, keep people employed, keep money in their pockets so they can have shelter and food. Thank you, Speaker.
Questions for the member for Toronto Danforth. The Government House Leader has a point of order.
Thank you, Speaker. Just rise in accordance with Standing Order 59 to outline business for the coming week. On Monday, Bill 202, Soldiers' Aid Commission Act, will be considered. In the morning we will have consideration of a private member's bill from the member for Niagara Centre. On Tuesday, Bill 202, Soldiers' Aid Commission Act. In the morning. In the afternoon, we will be Bill 207, Moving Family Law Forward Act, and in the evening, a private member's bill standing in the name of the member for Don Valley West. On Wednesday morning, Bill 207, Moving Family Law Forward Act. In the afternoon, Bill 207, Moving Family Law Forward Act, and then a PMB standing in the name of the member for University Rosedale. And on Thursday morning, Soldiers' Aid, Bill 202 again. Of course, in the afternoon, there will be a budget, which means that there will be no PMB on that day. In addition, Mr. Speaker, in accordance with the Emergency Management Act, the Minister Jones is tentatively scheduled to table a report, a 120-day report on Monday, which then we will be seeking permission or approval to have a take-note debate on Wednesday evening for the consideration of the 120-day report. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions to the member for Toronto Danforth? The member for Parry Sound Muskoka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member for Toronto Danforth for his comments. But I guess my question is, why does the member not support these important supports for our small Main Street businesses? And you know, this plan is building on our more than $10 billion in urgent relief and support through the COVID-19 action plan. And from what I've seen, I believe the government has reacted very quickly throughout this whole pandemic, starting out by listening to businesses when they were struggling to survive and making it much easier to form patios. And in this bill, something that also came out was allowing restaurants to do alcohol sales with takeout. This bill makes that permanent. I'm not sure why the member doesn't think that's a good idea. Providing vital support for those very small businesses, $1,000 for every single small business from 2 to 9 employees for the PPE and the plexiglass shields, etc., helping them create an online presence. Why are you against this support?
Member for Toronto Danforth to reply.
First of all, with respect to the member who I've known for a long time, I didn't say I didn't support the bill. What I said, and if you were listening to me, that it was inadequate, that I think it's a good idea to do some of this stuff. I want you to do much more. You have the financial capacity. You noted the $10 billion in relief funding that was allocated, of which the bulk is unspent, while at the same time, businesses are crying for relief and assistance. When I talk to my businesses, they say, why is the provincial government turning its back on us? And I don't know if that's the experience you have, but I've talked to small businesses in Guelph and in Ottawa who've had exactly the same experience and have the same emotional frustration. Why is it that they've allocated so much money and we're in such desperate circumstances?
Response?
So it isn't a question of don't like the idea that you're bringing support. I don't like the idea you're not giving them enough support.
Once again, I'll invite members to make their comments through the chair, even though we're doing questions and responses. Member for Algoma, Manitoulin.
Thank you, Speaker. And I did listen to the member from Toronto Danforth very closely. His theme was pinching pennies, and I hope that somebody pinches me by the end of this, because we often sit in our seats here and the government says, why are you always opposing? Why can't you propose something? Well, Speaker, here's a few proposals that we've made. And what I want to tell the member of the Toronto Danforth is a ban on all evictions, lockouts, and evictions threats and commercial landlords in this bill. Is the Institute of Utility Payment Freeze in this bill? Is there a 75% commercial rent subsidy in this bill? Is there anything in regards to creating a fund fund for business that face historic barriers in this bill? Is there anything in regards to creating a safe reopening and remote work for some funds for small businesses in this bill? Is there a bring in Made in Ontario paid sick days? Is there a keep our kids safe and parents? Is there a create more child care spaces in this bill? Is there anything in regards to insurance gouging in this bill? Is there anything of these things in this bill? I ask of the member of Toronto Danforth.
Member for Toronto Danforth.
Well, I thank the member for Algoma Manitoulin, and I have to say, he's a great speaker. I mean, you did better in that 1 minute than I did in my whole 10, and I'm very appreciative. In answer to your question, though, no, the things that are needed are not there. The things that are needed are not there. I got a call just the other day from a mosque in my riding, not a small business. Their insurance rates had gone from about $3,000 a year to $20,000 a year. And I know from talking to other businesses, Queen and Broadview in my riding, they have had insurance quotes come back at 5 and 6 times the previous insurance rates. So they don't understand why, given the crisis they're facing, they're being beaten up. It isn't as though their establishments are being overrun with more and more people causing risk. No, they've got fewer and fewer people. So given that they have smaller populations indoors, you would think that the rates would not be going up. At worst, they would be stable, and perhaps they would get a break. We all know what happened with auto insurance, where people drove dramatically less, and instead of there being a mandated or automatic reduction in insurance fees, no. I hear drivers say to me, I'm getting dinged for more. There are huge holes in this bill, member, huge holes, and you've pointed them out so efficiently.
Questions? The member for Flamborough-Glanbrook.
To our friend from Toronto Danforth, this bill, our Main Street Recovery, is only part of the efforts that this government has engaged upon. Our Main Street Recovery Plan was really based on hundreds of virtual town halls and the largest, most extensive consultation with stakeholders ever in the history of this province. We realize that small business needs help, and this is only one of the initiatives that we've brought forward. We spoke recently about this bill, the Main Street bill, and prior to that, the Better for People, Smarter for Business bill. 2 bills that contain policies and changes that will help small business. We talked about the $1,000 grant, for example, to cover the cost of PPE. We know that there's about $2,500 allocated if you're interested in digitizing your business, in improving your online presence. But they're only part of a larger plan. And we will continue to bring forward more measures that will help small business. We just heard from the member opposite talk about help for insurance, help for in other areas. These are things that we are addressing, but this is just one bill of many that we are bringing forward. Hear, hear. To the member opposite, do you recognize that this is just one piece of the puzzle? Do you prefer our efforts in smaller bills, or would you like an omnibus bill?
For Toronto Danforth.
Thank you, and my thanks to the member from Flamborough-Glanbrook, who I have to say I appreciate working with. We've been in estimates forever, I think, and you've been a very productive member, so I appreciate that, and I appreciate your comments here. You're right, this is only part of what you're doing, but what you're doing is so small that, you know, when you get to a part of it, it's vanishingly small. It's hard to find it. I'm digging around on the desk. I'm not finding enough. You're not addressing the insurance rates. You're not addressing commercial evictions. You're not addressing childcare. You're not addressing a variety of factors that businesses say to me, we need to have done. And I know you're doing a number of other things around reg changes, but do you have in place a commercial rent subsidy program that will help these tenants? I don't see it, and they don't see it either. What they constantly ask me is, how is the provincial government helping me? Oh, sorry.
Further questions? The member from Kiiwetinoong.
Miigwech, Speaker. Thank you for your presentation, member for Toronto Danforth. As you know, I come from a northwestern Ontario. I'm not sure if we have a lot of main streets in our communities. We have roads, gravel roads. We have airports. That's about all I can say. But in the north, between Thunder Bay and the Manitoba border, we have a lot of tourism lodges, and so they've lost as much as 95% of their revenue that what they receive in the summertime. So I'm just wondering, like, does this bill address any of that? Miigwech.
Response? Member from.
No, I appreciate the question from the member because it's a substantial one. We here in Southern Ontario think that the world ends around Barrie. And I think some members on the other side would argue strongly that the world at least makes it to Muskoka. But you're right. This bill doesn't appear to address the needs of northwestern or northeastern Ontario, where you have an economy oriented, where you're not dealing with natural resources, to tourism for extraordinary parts of this planet. And I'm surprised, in fact, that we're not seeing that addressed. I know the member from Flamborough-Glanbrook was saying, well, there's many more pieces here, but unless the member from Kiiwetinoong can enlighten me, I'm not aware of any of the pieces that address those lodges, that address the tourism industry in the north. And that's a huge failing. That's a huge gap, Speaker, because we want the north to be successful with a diversified economy. We know what happens if you're resting on only one pillar. You tend to fall.
Thank you. Further debate?